morning, everybody. Ooh, I think they heard that on Hooper. Thank you so much for participating with us today in this important observance. We join together today to compassionately honor and remember the 2,975 individuals who were killed on September 11th, 2001, in the terrorist attacks on America, as well as those who were injured during the attacks and the many who rose in service in response. The first responders, the volunteers, the rescue and recovery workers, the uniformed safety personnel, and the hundreds of thousands of others who serve or have served in our armed forces here at home and overseas. I would now ask everyone to stand for the singing of our national anthem by Mr. Alfred Parchman. Alfred.
Thank you. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. Sorry, you didn't have my seat. I'll sit around the back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's a little bit windy here, so I want everybody to help me if these papers get blown across the mall. We'll scoop them up and get back and get started all over again. Welcome to Ocean County College on this solemn and most important occasion as we gather to honor the memory of those who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. On that clear Tuesday morning, Al-Qaeda militants attacked and hijacked 4 commercial airplanes and carried out unprecedented attacks against the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, as most of you will remember. A third struck the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and a fourth, which took off from right here in New Jersey, crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people were killed during the attacks, leaving families torn and heartbroken, and a nation in shock and in mourning. Most Americans who are old enough to recall that day can tell you exactly where they were when they first heard the devastating news. Just weeks after the attacks, a ceremony to honor the victims and their families, a speech by President George W. Bush, said, for those of us who have lived through these events, the only marker that we will ever need is the tick of a clock at the 46th minute of the 8th hour of the 11th day. We will remember where we were and how we felt. We will remember the dead and what we owe them. We will remember what we lost and what we have found. Today, just as we have each year since 2001, we take the time here on the OCC campus to remember. We remember those who perished on 9/11 in the World Trade Center, in the Pentagon, and on the 4 hijacked planes. as well as those who risked their own lives to save others. We also remember our strength as a nation, our spirit as the United States of America. Thank you to OCC alum Alfred Parchman for the wonderful rendition of our national anthem, which reminds us that despite tragedy and in times of darkness and faltering optimism, the Star-Spangled Banner continues to wave. America remains, as ever, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We also want to thank, in advance of her appearance here to speak, a student at Ocean County College, Stephanie Magnata. Stephanie, stand up so we can all see you. Thank you. And thank you for joining our commemoration today and for contributing through the tremendous power of poetry. We are privileged to have with us this morning from the Ocean County Board of Commissioners, our newest commissioner, Barbara Jo Crea. Bobby, would you stand up, please? And from Toms River Township, the Honorable Morris Mohill, our mayor. Mr. Mayor, you got to stand up and let us all clap. Thank you. And Mr. Mark Mutter, retired municipal clerk, and I call him Mr. Mayor because he was the unofficial mayor back then, did a great job. Mark, thank you for being with us. Our board chair, Mr. Jerry Dasty. Jerry? Our newest trustee, Mr. Joseph Latshaw, the student alumni trustee for 22-23. Joe, please stand up. And someone I know everyone here will remember, our former board chair, Mr. Carl Van Tulleen, and his lovely wife, Kathleen. Sir, can you both stand up? Thank you. We're privileged also to have the brilliant executive director of the Ocean County College Foundation here with us as well, Mr. Ken Malagier. Thank you. Also joining us from the OCC community, whom you've already heard from, Jan Kristen, excuse me, Jan Kristen, our MC, and she is the executive director of college relations and does a fabulous job in that role for us. Also, Amir Sawardi, lecturer of English, and you will be hearing from Amir shortly. Vinny Petrecka, adjunct instructor of criminal justice and retired chief of detectives for Ocean County. Vinny, would you stand up, please? You're already standing. Jason Gabezi, lecturer of political science, also over there. You want to wave, Jason? And Lynn Keneally, professor of business and social science, and they will also be participating in this presentation in a few moments. Thank you all for attending with us today. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell once said, "The one thing that terrorists cannot do, not one of them, not 10 of them, not 10,000 of them, they can't change who we are as an open, freedom-loving people. Despite horrors and hardships, as Americans, we move forward. We remember and we commemorate, but we do not fear." I will close with a poem titled "To the Words," written by W.S. Merwin on September 17th, 2001, shortly after this event, and published in the New Yorker on October 8th, 2001. It's called "To the Words." When it happens, you are not there. O you beyond numbers, beyond recollection, passed on from breath to breath, given again from day to day, from age to age, charged with knowledge, knowing nothing. Indifferent elders, indispensable and sleepless, keepers of our names before we ever came to be called by them. You that were formed to begin with, you that were cried out, you that were spoken to begin with, to say what could not be said. Ancient, precious, and helpless ones, say it. After 9/11, we all tried to find the words to explain, to understand, to help us grieve, and to help us recover. More than 2 decades later, we still search for a way to appropriately say it. We still seek those words. And so this morning, with the words that we can find, we memorialize those we have lost, and in so doing, we celebrate their lives. Once again, thank you all for coming today, and now it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Amir Sarwadi, OCC Lecturer of English. Amir?
Thank you, President Larson. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Very much appreciated. I'm going to be reading some excerpts from an account of September 11th written by a novelist named David Foster Wallace. You might have heard of him. He wrote a piece in Rolling Stone magazine about his recollections experiencing September 11th as a New Yorker from Bloomington, Indiana, where he was living among people whose understanding of that day was actually quite different from his. And so I hope that his recall of that day will kind of remind us that despite our many differences as Americans, we are nevertheless, our difference is actually the things that make us stronger as a nation. And though we may recall that day in different ways, nevertheless, the source of our strength is our difference. And so he talks about watching the events of September 11th on a TV that didn't belong to him. He didn't own a TV, and so in Bloomington, Indiana, he actually had to go to one of his neighbor's house. He actually heard of the news of the attacks on the radio, and to find out more details, he actually went to a neighbor's house to watch the events sort of unfold on a neighbor's TV. The house, I end up sitting with shampoo in my hair. He had been showering when he had heard the news on the radio, and he immediately had to leave and find a TV. And so he went to his neighbor's house. The house, I end up sitting with shampoo in my hair, watching most of the actual unfolding horror at belongs to Mrs. Thompson, who is one of the world's cooler 74-year-olds, and exactly the kind of person who, in an emergency, even if her phone is busy, you know you can just come on over. She lives about a mile away from me on the other side of a mobile home park. The streets are not crowded, but they're also not as empty as they're going to get. Mrs. Thompson's is a tiny, immaculate one-story home on the west side, which on the west coast would be called a bungalow, but on the south side of Bloomington, Indiana, which is where he lives, is called a house. Mrs. Thompson is a long-time member and leader in the congregation, and her living room tends to be a gathering place. She's also the mom of one of my best friends here, F, who was in the Rangers in Vietnam and got shot in the knee, and now works for a contractor installing various kinds of franchise stores and malls. Skipping ahead, the first sign of possible shock was the fact that I didn't just ring the bell, but just came on into Mrs. Thompson's house, which I would normally never do. Thanks in part to her son's trade connections, Mrs. T had a 40-inch flat-panel Philips TV on which Dan Rather appears for a second in shirt sleeves with his hair slightly mussed. People in Bloomington seem overwhelmingly to prefer CBS News. It's unclear why. Several other ladies from church are already over there, but I don't know if I exchanged greetings with anyone because I remember when I came in, everybody was staring transfixed at one of the few pieces of video CBS never reran. It was a distant, wide-angle shot of the North Tower and its top floor's exposed steel lattice in flames, and of dots detaching from the building and moving through smoke down the screen, which then a sudden jerky tightening of the shot revealed to be actual people in coats and ties and skirts with their shoes falling off as they fell, some hanging onto ledges or girders and then letting go upside down or wriggling as they fell, and one couple almost seemingly unverifiable to be hugging each other as they fell those several stories, and shrank back to dots as the camera then all of a sudden pulled back to the long view. I have no idea how long the clip took, after which Dan Rather's mouth seemed to move for a second before any sound emerged, and everyone in the room sat back and looked at one another with expressions that seemed somehow both childlike and terribly old. I think one or two people made some sort of sound. I'm not sure what else to say. It seems grotesque to talk about being traumatized by a piece of video when the people in the video are dying. Something about the shoes also falling made it worse. I think the old ladies took it better than I did. Then the hideous beauty of the rerun clip of the second plane hitting the tower, the blue and silver and black and spectacular orange of it as more little moving dots fell. Mrs. Thompson in her chair, which is a rocker with floral cushions. The living room has 2 other chairs and a corduroy sofa. All the seats were occupied, meaning I think 5 or 6 other people, mostly women, all over the age of 50, and there were more voices in the kitchen, one of which was very upset sounding and belonged to Mrs. R. Many of the people were Mrs. T's neighbors, and some were still in their bathrobes. At various times, people left to go home and use the phone and come back. At one point, around the time the South Tower was falling down unto itself, I remember thinking that it was falling the way that an elegant lady faints. But it was Mrs. Bracero's son, Dwayne, who pointed out that it looked like if you took some film of a NASA liftoff and ran it backward, which now, after several reviewings, does seem dead on. There were at least a dozen people in the house. The living room was dim because in summer here everyone keeps their drapes pulled down. And then moving further on, he talks again about these sort of experiences. And he says, one side effect of the horror was an overwhelming desire to call everyone you loved. It was established early on that you couldn't get to New York. Dialing 212 only yielded a weird whooping sound. People kept asking Mrs. T's permission to use the phone until she would just say, just go ahead and use it. From the door to the kitchen, I remember seeing the second tower fall and being confused about whether it was a replay of the first tower falling. Another thing about the hay fever is that you can't ever be sure whether someone's crying. But over the 2 hours of first-run horror, with bonus reports of the crash in PA and Bush being moved into an SAC bunker and a car bomb that's going off in Chicago, later retracted, pretty much everybody either cries or comes very close, according to his or her relative abilities. Mrs. Thompson says less than almost anyone else. I don't think she cries, but she doesn't rock in her chair as usual either. And so later on, I end up doing pretty much the only good that I can do all day and explaining to Mrs. R where in Midtown Manhattan the Twin Towers were. It thereupon emerges that none of the people here in Bloomington who I'm watching this account with know or even have familiar with the geography of New York in the way that I am. They have neither the vaguest notion of New York's layout or don't know, for example, how radically far south the financial district and the Statue of Liberty are. They have to be shown this via pointing to the ocean in the foreground of the skyline they all know so well from TV. This geography lesson is the start of a feeling of alienation. This is Foster Wallace talking about alienation that he's feeling from his very own neighbors because he comes from the East Coast and they all live and were born in Bloomington, Indiana. This geography lesson is the start of a feeling of alienation from these good people that builds in me all throughout the part of the horror where people flee rubble and dust. These ladies are not stupid or ignorant. Mrs. Thompson can read both Latin and Spanish, and Mrs. Voigtlander is a certified speech therapist who once explained to me that the strange gulping sound that makes Tom Brokaw sound so distracting is in fact a speech impediment. It was one of the ladies out in the kitchen who pointed out that September 11th is the anniversary of the Camp David Accords, which was certainly news to me. What these Bloomington ladies are, or start to seem to me, is innocent. There is what would strike many Americans as a marked, startling lack of cynicism in this room. It does not, for instance, occur to anyone here to remark on how it's maybe a little odd that all 3 network anchors are in shirt sleeves, or to consider the possibility that Dan Rather's hair being mussed might not be wholly accidental, or that the constant rerunning of horrific footage might not just be in case some viewers were only now tuning in and hadn't seen it yet. None of the ladies seem to notice the president's odd, little lightless eyes appear to get closer and closer together. Nor that at least some of the sheer weirdness of watching the horror unfold has now been closely how closely various shots and scenes have mirrored plots of movies. Instead, what they all do is sit together and feel really bad and pray. No one in Mrs. Thompson's crew would ever be so nauseous as to try to get everybody to pray out loud or form a prayer circle, but you can still tell what they're all doing. Make no mistake, this is mostly a good thing. It forces you to think and do things you most likely wouldn't do alone. Like, for instance, while watching the address, and eyes to pray silently, fervently, that you're wrong about your cynicism, about what's going on over here. It's just a bit lonely to feel the cynicism on your own, surrounded by people who truly believe in everything that they're seeing. Truly decent, innocent people can be taxing to be around. I'm not for a moment trying to suggest that everyone I know in Bloomington is like Mrs. Thompson. I'm trying rather to explain how some part of the horror was knowing deep in my heart that whatever America the men in those planes hated so much was far more my America than it was the America of these ladies. And so the point of this is, again, Foster Wallace considering the fact that the experience of the attacks was an experience that basically was meant to divide Americans. And in fact, he considers the fact that it should actually bring the country together and it shouldn't lead us towards cynicism, but at the same time, he wishes that he could convey his feelings of alienation as a New Yorker living in the Midwest to these folks without seeming like he is sort of preaching or being sort of doctrinal. So I hope we'll all remember that the fact that September 11th affected us all in different ways should be a way for us Americans to come together and not have wedges driven between us, because indeed our differences are what make us stronger as a nation, and not the things that should divide us or turn us against one another. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vince Petrecka, retired Chief of Detectives with the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office. I just want to say thank you for being here today. President Larson, thank you for having me here to speak shortly in reference to 9/11. I heard Amir speak. I just wanted to start it off, like we talk about what happened. A lot of you in the audience weren't around when 9/11 took place. We all have stories, when it happened. I'm just going to give you a short story. I remember the day I was working a undercover investigation, a very intensive investigation, working in the area of where the towers were with multiple law enforcement agencies. This investigation was going on for a long period of time. We were dealing with a lot of individuals that were with high-risk criminal investigations. The day of 9/11, that morning, when multiple agencies, law enforcement agencies, we were working together when the first plane hit the first tower and then the second plane hit the second tower. Our pagers were going off like crazy. At that time, I noticed multiple agents that we were working with, and that was from the federal, state, county, local police departments. How we became together in law enforcement that day and to help the individuals that were in need. We will never forget all the people who were killed during the terrorist attack on our country 21 years ago. There were many lives saved by bravery of others, from police officers, firefighters, to regular officers, office workers. The heroes came from all walks of life. We must honor the heroes. We must never be forgotten. 23 members of the NYPD, the New York City Police Department, died in the line of duty on that day as they responded to the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. Let's remember their heroic actions and help save thousands of lives. Those officers, I want to mention their names really quick. Sergeant John Coughlin, Emergency Squad number 4. Sergeant Michael Curtin, Emergency Service Squad number 2. Sergeant Rodney Gillis, Emergency Squad number 8. Sergeant Timothy Roy, Traffic Control Division Bus Unit. Detective Claude Richards, Bomb Squad. Detective Joseph Vigiano, Emergency Service Squad number 2. Police Officer John Delarao, Emergency Service Squad number 2. Police Officer Vincent Dons, Emergency Service Squad number 3. Police Officer Jerome M. Dominguez, Emergency Service Squad number 3. Police Officer Stephen Driscoll, Emergency Service Squad number 4. Police Officer Mark Ellis, Transit Borough, District 4. Police Officer Robert Fazio, the 13th District Precinct. Police Officer Ronald Klopfer, Emergency Service Squad Number 7. Police Officer Thomas Langan, Emergency Service Squad Number 10. Police Officer James Leahy, 6th Precinct. Police Officer Brian McDaniel, Emergency Service Squad Number 1. Police Officer John Perry, 40th Precinct. Police Officer Glenn Pettit, Police Academy Video Production Unit. Police Officer Mario Smith, 13th Precinct. Police Officer Raymond Suarez, the Transit Bureau, District 4. Police Officer Paul Talty, Emergency Service Squad Number 10. Police Officer Santos Valentine, Jr., Emergency Service Squad Number 7. Police Officer Walter E. Waver, Emergency Service Squad Number 3. I just want to say that when I was working 31 years in law enforcement, when 9/11 occurred and how agencies, law enforcement, became together. It was so important that we become together because the fact that it was very important that there was a lack of communication with our agencies. And after 9/11, we learned that communication / information / intelligence was very important. And I was honored to be the chief of detectives with the prosecutor's office, and that was a big priority within Ocean County to make everyone safe within this county. And still today, that is carried on today, that what we use for our sources, our resources, our intelligence and information to make the people safe within Ocean County. We will never forget the others that perished on this day. Thank you, and God bless you in the United States of America. Thank you.
For the 21st anniversary of this 9/11 ceremony, I'm going to be reciting 3 poems. The first poet is Sandy Solomon. She's a London-based poet. Her poems have been appeared in various magazines, including The New Yorker, The Republican, the Threepenny Review, the Gettysburg, the Times Literary Supplement, and the Parisian Review. This is called September 2001. How to speak of blood, but not as blood. Bone but as bone, and ash. Ash for the urns of the many unfound, name upon name murmured. Daughter, son, husband, wife, parent, friend, or none, gone under a true September morning, sun, while at home light lattice the carpets, and pain seem the slightest obstacle. To clear, call it perfect, day beyond, as helplessly we watch their murder be done. All screened and screened, again as if anyone could master their unending deaths, the thousands, blood and bone, buried, burned, ashes, risen in the wind and fallen, with the building's dust, name on name, to sound, steady as rain's light drum, multiple resolved, daughter, son, husband, friend, father, son, husband, and nun, Norrell, Anna, Sakara, Sean, Glenn, Ariane, Arena, Sunsil, Alina, and John. Oops. The second poet I'm going to be reading from is Susan Berkland. Susan Berkland was a San Francisco-based poet, partner, and performance artist. This poem is one of 2 that were chosen and published in the Eye for Eye Makers for the whole world blind. This is the Jesus poem. If I had been trapped in one of those towers, if I had a cell phone, I'd have called my sister and brother and told them I loved them, loved my life, and always would. To thank everyone for being so good for me and take no avenging actions, nor support the avenging actions of others, but to let me die with my dignity and my faith. I'd then step into the air, opening beneath me to my last fall. It's hard to say what I'd be feeling, surprise, mystification, terror, glory, but I'm sure I wouldn't be angry. In the last moments, there's nothing to fix, no protests against the speed of my fall. I imagine I'd be filled with something beyond terror, a feeling which is from where we stand intolerably bright. The last poet I'm going to be reading from is Mina Alexander. She was an award-winning poet and distinguished professor of English at the Graduate Center of Hunter College. Yale University Press published her edit volume, drawing on work by the 20th century Indian writers in several languages. This is Kabri Singh's of Burning Towers. What a shame. They plucked you so. You plucked your sahari off. You crushed it into a ball, then spread it onto the floor. Sparks from the towers fled through the weave of silk. With your dark hair and sun-dark skin, you're just a child of earth. Kabri sings, "O men and dogs, in times of grief, our rolling earth grows small." Thank you for having me.
Good morning. When 9/11 happened, I left my daughter, who was 15 days old, to come to OCC, and I sat with Joe Kirchhoff, and we cried. And I think I'm sorry, it's very important for those of you in the back who are too young to remember that there are people from Ocean County who died. So, sorry I'm crying. Professor Kabisi suggested we start this, and we started it decades ago so that we don't forget people. So the flags are here, and we would like to honor the people from Ocean County who passed away, who were there doing their jobs, visiting people, minding their own business. So, sorry, we need some volunteers to put the flags down. First flag, John James Badadaklia.
Brett T. Bailey.
Put them in the, you can put them in the ground for us. You can do them individually, that's fine. You have to, sorry, it's a little windy. Christopher Seaton Kramer.
Michael David Deal.
Patrick Joseph Driscoll.
Patricia Mary Fagan.
John Roger Fisher.
Harvey Joseph Gardner III.
Robert Clinton Kennedy.
Joseph Mangano.
Ferdinand Fred V. Maroney.
Edward K. Oliver.
Jim A. Periconti Jr.
Susan M. Polio.
James Jim Sands Jr.
Raphael Skorka.
Christopher M. Traina.
Evan Day Barron.
John Robert Cruz.
William Hill Kelly Jr.
Thomas Scroy.
And Catherine Smith.
Thank you to everyone for honoring our Ocean County neighbors and friends who passed away. Oh, thank you, Jason. On 9/11, thank you to everyone for being here. We should never forget what happened on 9/11/2001. Thank you very much.